Okay.
Okay, what is the novel in? Well, we're gonna figure this out by going through the plot of the novel. We're not gonna go over like the whole plot of the novel, but we're gonna mainly focus on like the conflict of the novel. But mainly, with me and Jonathan are presenting two different viewpoints on the on the ending,
So
on the
what we
conflict.
thought was that the ending left us with a lot of questions still, well, personally. And I wanted to, we wanted to show people that we had different perspectives and how Kafka came out to be and how like how he viewed the world and life afterwards, after like the very end of the book, is very different from how he started out from the beginning of the book.
Okay, so I feel as though that the novel ended with Crop. So, for starters, I'm going to be talking about the type of conflict I'm going to be talking about is person versus fate.
Trinae Draper, please report to the main office. Trinae Draper, please report to the main office.
And a little bit of Jonathan's person versus self. Okay, so first let's start off with the plot of the novel. Like for the beginning, okay, y'all know like the 7 parts of the plot. What?
A lot. You can explain.
Okay, so the first one is exposition. That's basically like explaining the characters in the setting, and that starts off on the boy named Crow, when we establish who the main character is, Kafka. The second one is the complication. So like, what is the problem? Kafka doesn't want to stay with his father. He doesn't want to stay with his father. He doesn't want to stay home. And now we're going to start talking about the conflict of the novel. So, like I said, I'm going to start talking about person versus fate. So pretty much throughout the entire novel, like Kafka, like pretty much the last 3/4 of the whole entire novel, Kafka is being forced to fulfill the Oedipal prophecy from his relationship with his so-called sister Sakura, to his relationship with Miss Saeki, who was supposed to be his mother, and to his relationship with his father. He supposedly killed him. So yeah, that's about it for right now.
So my perspective of the whole entire novel was that Kafka was actually experiencing change within himself throughout all the events that happened in the novel. In the book, Kafka on the Shore, Murakami uses Kafka and portrays him as a teenager who has teenager desires, but yet his life is so out of the mainstream that you wouldn't expect for a 15-year-old to take on a great change, much less recognize and accept this change. This reveals that no matter who you are or what you do, or even if you don't go with the flow of the world, that you can find your path to greatness and learn how to accept what's right for you. Stronger, weak, older, young, when change comes, embrace it before trying to go back to your old lifestyle, because sometimes change is what you need. So I'm going to start out in the beginning of the book, where we know that Kafka is he's following this Oedipus myth where he's supposed to kill his father and do what's it called, incest with his mother and sister. But we really know that he only has his father, and that we don't know anything about his mother or his sister. So though he still faces teenage problems, right? He still has his teenage desires that Murakami makes him face. For example, on page 24, it reads, "The soft breasts beneath, the pig nibbles taut under my fingers." Here is a vivid demonstration where we can see that Kafka is being immature with himself. He's looking at Sakura, a girl who he recently met like 20 minutes ago. They're on the bus, they're sitting next to each other, and what he's doing is looking at his breasts. Why? Because he's a teenager, because this is what he is, this is what we do. inevitable. It's meant to be, right? We know he's immature, but he will continue to grow within himself. So the next, in the past, well, we learn from past mistakes, right? But how can you learn from something that you don't know that you've committed a mistake? How can we accept this mistakes if we don't know that we're doing it? So on page 60, Murakami writes, "This simple centripetal life is blown to bits." Now here we see one of the first major events that takes place in Kafka's life throughout the book, which shows that his life has taken a different course now. Okay, so he says centripetal. Why? Because it's like one-way road, straight ahead, no curves, no bends, no nothing. It's one-way path. Every day it's the same thing. Now when he says it's blown to bits, we know here that something drastic is about to happen. It's happening, right? The fact that he woke up in the middle of nowhere and his blood was covered in shirt leaves us with suspension. Wonder what he's gonna do now. If he's gonna take up the responsibility for this, even though he knows we know he didn't do anything, or assume that he didn't do anything. So what does he do? He does the right thing. He looks for help, right? He goes over to Sakura's house where he stays there for a night, and they talk. He explains to her what happens, and then she listens. Continuing on with the book. Okay, on page 92, Kafka asks Sakura, "Is it okay if I imagine you naked?" Now, we know what Sakura is doing to him right now. It's like she's masturbating for him. And we see here that even though this is an awkward situation, most people wouldn't ask that question, right? But then we see that Kafka is developing a sense of responsibility, something that he must show out to the world. And continuing with the quote, it says here, "I can't help it. I'm imagining something's very important, so I thought I'd better tell you." Here we see that since his responsibility is growing, he wants to let people know that he's actually doing something. He just doesn't want to do it and then feel guilty about it later, even though it's just thinking about it, which makes no sense. It makes just the situation awkward, but we see that this is helping him grow into what he will come out to be at the end of the book. Later on, let's go all the way to the end. It says here, well, to the beginning actually. Crow came in as to the book. No, like Crow came in as in the beginning of the book. Came in to help Kafka, right? We know in the book he came in. He's telling him he's the toughest 15-year-old there is, and then he's also there to support him. He's there when Kafka thinks he needs him, which is not always, but he's there when Kafka is facing something that he hasn't faced before. So if it's here on page 130, are you kidding me? Have you? Okay. It says, "Are you kidding me? You're like some scared little kid, afraid of the silence and the dark. You're not going to wimp out on me, are you? You always thought that you were tough, but when it hits the fan, you look like you're about to burst into tears. Look at you. I bet you're going to wet your bed." And it keeps going. Ignoring him, I close my eyes tight, sit the bag up to just below my nose, and clear my head. I don't open my eyes for anything, not when I hear an owl hooting, not when something moans with a thud on the ground outside, not even when I sense something moving inside the cabin. I'm being tested. Now, here we see, this is his first night at the cabin, and before he got there, Oshima was explaining to him that the forest was dangerous, right? He says, "Don't wander so much into the forest because you'll get lost, and you'll be lost forever, basically." And then Kafka, we see he's like this little kid who's scared right there in the cabin, hiding under like his blankets, right? And Crow is telling him that he's scared, that It's like he's gonna wet his bed and all that, because this is the first time Kafka faces something like this. Now, going to page 367. We see a dramatical change now. Okay, it says here, I want to see how deep this forest really is. I know it's dangerous, but I want to see and feel what kind of danger lies ahead. How dangerous it is, I have to. Something's shoving me forward. Now, Kafka has changed. He no longer feels this fear towards the forest. That fear has been intercepted by something called curiosity. He's now curious. He wants to know why. Because throughout the book, we have seen that he has gone through a lot. And here he says, and feel. Now here, feel is italicized because this is something he actually really wants. It's like, before he was scared, but now he actually wants this. He wants to see if he really gets scared. And then the words I have are italicized. So it's like something he must do in order to pass the test. That at first, as he said, when he said, I'm being tested, this is the way to end the test with a passing grade. But back on page 130, if he lifted his head from his cover and saw what was awaiting him, we know he says that the fear would lurk in. So we know that by that, he means that he would fail that test. In the end, we go all the way to the very last page of the book, where he says, "You are part of a brand new world." No, this is everything after everything has happened. You know, the problem with Sayeki dies, and Kafka knows that she's dead, and so what does he do? He goes back to Oshima, and we see that Kafka is a brand new person now. Why? Because he says, I'm going back to Tokyo. I'm going to go to the police. Now, being a 15-year-old, being the toughest 15-year-old, takes a lot to go back to a place he ran away from. Here we can see that he has changed. He's a new person now, taking up this responsibility that he needs to. The fact that he's going to go back to the police, something that he was running away from also, hiding away from, and people were helping him hiding away from. We can see now that he has consumed a sense of like I said, responsibility. He has to take care of stuff. He cannot just run away anymore. Okay, now going back to when he was inside the entrance stone, when he was with Ms. Sayeki. If we remember, I don't have the quote, but if we remember, he told him, what am I gonna look? What's the point of living? And then she told him, look at the painting, a Kafka on the shore. Now, it took a lot for him to leave someone that he really loved, right? Because as we know, he was willing to stay in that place and lose his memories and stay with her, but she didn't want that. So what did he do? He did the right choice. He listened to her, and then he went back into the world he came from and faced his reality. In the end, you can overcome yourself by simply changing the way you are, seeing things differently. Now, the way people change and see and feel, see the things, see changes, there are different levels of difficulty, and not always are they the same, depends on the people. But we just know that change is necessary within the life, and then we see this, that Kafka came himself, he defeated his own self, which, and then, yeah, he defeated his own self, you know, he became someone greater than what he was at the beginning of the book.
Now, back on with Jonathan's person versus self, I started talking about how I think that the novel ended with Crow. If you look on page 4 to 5, you'll see Kafka's dependency on Crow when he starts saying that I listen to him, I look for him for answers. So, as I'm saying, Kafka has a seriously strong dependency on Crow. But so when in a second, the boy named Crow, when Crow finally realizes that he isn't a real person, he's just a fragment of Kafka's imagination, he kills himself. So when Crow is finally dead, Kafka doesn't really have anyone to depend on, because he was pretty much dependent on Crow the whole time, who was a part of himself. So, in conclusion, for me, Kafka's dependency on Crow pushed him through the entire novel. So, Kafka really didn't think on his own at all. So, once Crow died, Kafka was finally forced to face his own reality. Are there any questions?
What do you think Kafka's dependency on Crow has to say about the society?
What it has to say about society? Okay, so Kafka didn't really have anyone to actually lean on. So when he came up with Crow, it kind of shows that we all pretty much need a shoulder to lean on in society, because like we don't have anyone. What are we gonna do?
Okay, so I have a question for you. Well, I have a couple questions. But the first one is, like, do you think Crow, him dying in the second, a boy named Crow, I think that's what it's called, do you think it had a great deal of impact on Kafka maturing by the end of the novel?
Because like I said before, Kafka pretty much depended on Crow for all of the answers. So once Crow was no longer, Kafka had to like mature and like actually become the most what's the most powerful, strongest 15-year-old ever? The toughest 15-year-old, because he didn't have Crow anymore. He didn't have Miss Saiki. He didn't have anyone. So he had to be a man and be on his own.
Do you think Kafka going back home shows how Kafka became, like, show the difference that the Kafka that went back home is more mature than the Kafka that left?
Yeah, that's what I was trying to explain, that he, with the perspective of person versus self, right? The person who ran away from home was a different person who went back home at the end of the book, because we can see that he went to different stages of maturity throughout the book. He went growing. He got more confidence with people. He knew what to say and how to say it. And we can see that, even though I didn't say it, he said the right things to get Miss Saiki in his bed like he wanted to, and he got that. Why? Because he was maturing more within the book. So yeah, I think he did mature more, and that's my perspective of the book, that he matured more and became someone self-sustaining, and that's why he decided to go back home to face what he had to face.
Yeah. So when you were talking about Kafka and when he was in the forest and how the forest was dangerous, and at first that he was scared, but then he ended up going and exploring the forest. Do you think that